My name is Pearl Monroe. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how I finally stopped asking to be loved and started choosing who deserved my love instead. It was a bright, glistening evening in San Diego. The kind that tricks you into thinking everything is beautiful, everything is peaceful. But for me, it felt like standing outside a glass house, watching everyone else live in the warmth I was always denied. I arrived 10 minutes early to my parents' 35th wedding anniversary dinner. Early, but still, too late to matter. The event was being held at the upscale Italian restaurant atop the Fairmont Hotel, where chandeliers hung like royalty, and even the carpet seemed too pristine to step on. I wore a pearl-colored silk dress, delicate and soft. It took me weeks to choose it. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed armor. I needed something to make me feel visible. Real. Like I had a place at that table. As I stepped into the room, my heels echoing softly across the marble, the first person I locked eyes with was Savannah, my sister. At least, that's what people called her. Sister. Blood. Family. But she looked at me the way you'd glance at someone in line ahead of you at the airport. No warmth. No recognition. Just a polite, meaningless smile. "Oh, you made it," she said, lips curled in charm, eyes completely blank. She wore a deep red Ellie Saab gown, hair in perfect curls, makeup soft yet theatrical. Every inch of her screamed grace, applause, perfection. Savannah always knew how to command a room without saying a word. And I had always been the footnote. My mother came next, offering me the kind of hug you'd give a distant coworker. Cold arms, tight smile, and perfume too strong. "You look fine," she said, voice laced with awkward tension. My father didn't even bother. He gave a nod and muttered, "Pearl." Then turned away, already done with me. They seated me at the far end of the table, near the orchid centerpiece, next to my cousin's fiancé, who'd introduced himself 3 times and still called me Paige. Not a single soul asked how I was doing. Not one mention of the nonprofit campaign I'd led. Or that I had just moved into a new apartment after earning a promotion in San Francisco. No. The conversation, like always, orbited around Savannah. Savannah, who had just spoken at some tech conference. Savannah, who'd been interviewed in a luxury lifestyle magazine. Savannah, who was reportedly in talks with a French skincare giant. My name was never uttered. My story, completely erased. But I wasn't there to compete. I was there to give something. A small silver envelope sat inside my purse. I had held it so many times that its edges were already soft. It wasn't just money. It was a gesture. A symbol of peace. A thank you. For the people who raised me, really raised me, with love, with patience, with presence. The dinner unfolded like a carefully rehearsed play. The laughter came in waves. Cutlery clinked in rhythm. People sipped wine like they were reading from a script. I almost fooled myself into believing I might survive the evening unscathed. Until Savannah stood up. She raised her glass and smiled, luminous under the golden restaurant lights. Her voice was smooth. Practiced. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began. "But especially, I want to thank the 2 most important people in my life, Daniel and Linda Monroe. Our parents. They raised me with love, with patience, with trust. Because of them, I am who I am today." She turned to them, lifted her glass higher. "And I'm so lucky to have been their only child." A silence fell. Then polite laughter. Nods. A few chuckles. But no one corrected her. No one said my name. Not even a glance from my mother. No nervous cough from my father. Savannah didn't stutter, didn't blink. She meant it. And suddenly, I wasn't just overlooked. I was invisible. Forgotten by design. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look up. I stared at the white plate in front of me, where my risotto sat untouched, growing cold like the space between me and the people I once called my family. There was no scene. No shouting. Just a stillness so thick, it choked out any attempt at denial. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a bad joke. It was deliberate. They had chosen the version of life where I did not exist. And maybe that's how they preferred it. I reached into my purse, feeling the weight of that silver-gray envelope. It had taken me so long to write the note inside. I had rewritten it a dozen times. First, it said, "For all you've done." Then it became, "For everything I still wish we could be." Eventually, I tore that one up too. The final version was just 4 words, "Thank you for seeing me." But those words weren't meant for my parents. I stood. No tapping on a glass. No announcement. Just the quiet slide of a chair being pushed back. I walked across the room, past curious eyes and frozen forks, straight toward the side table near the window, where Aunt Emily and Uncle Robert sat. They weren't glamorous. No one had complimented their clothes. No one cared they were there. But they had always shown up for me, even when my parents didn't. When I was 13 and my mom forgot to pick me up from school, again, it was Uncle Robert who drove 4 hours to get me. When I got the flu during senior year and Savannah was crowned homecoming queen, it was Aunt Emily who stayed up all night to bring me soup and read me a book out loud, just like when I was little. I stopped in front of them. Aunt Emily blinked up at me, confused, her eyes wide with quiet worry. Uncle Robert tilted his head, his hands already leaving his wine glass, bracing for something unspoken. I held out the envelope. "I have a gift," I said. My voice didn't shake. "A thank you for the people who raised me with patience and kindness." There it was. The rupture. A clean break in the performance of the night. A ripple of murmurs passed down the table like a breeze disrupting a line of dominoes. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't look at Savannah. I only saw Aunt Emily's hand gently accept the envelope. And the tears that began to gather in her lashes before she even opened it. "This is for the 2 of you," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." I turned and walked back to my seat. As if I'd gone to refill my drink. No explanation. No apology. No spectacle. Just truth, placed softly into the palm of the only people who had ever made me feel safe. The rest of the dinner stumbled forward, like an actor who forgot their lines but had to finish the scene anyway. Someone tried to crack a joke about the dessert. My father cleared his throat. My mother smiled too widely. Savannah never looked my way again. And I sat in silence, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Release. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The light in my apartment was pale and still. I made coffee, stared at my phone, and waited. At 8:16 a.m., a message came in. From Aunt Emily. Just one character. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called. They answered on speaker. "We haven't opened it yet," Aunt Emily said softly. "You can now," I replied. There was a pause. Then the rustle of paper. And then, silence. No exclamations. No "oh my gods." Just a stunned quiet. I had transferred $50,000 into their joint account. Not because I wanted to buy love. But because I had to give it back. The love they gave me, the safety they offered, without conditions, without questions. Aunt Emily's voice trembled. "Pearl, no. No way. This isn't right." "It is," I said. "It's for you both." "But you meant to give this to your parents, didn't you?" Uncle Robert asked, like the words were too sharp to say out loud. I paused. I did. No one said anything for a long time. Finally, Aunt Emily whispered, "We didn't do anything to deserve this, sweetheart." "You didn't have to. You did what my parents never did," I said. "You saw me. That was all. And it was everything." The next call didn't come from Aunt Emily. It came from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. The recording was sharp, clipped, and brittle with disbelief. "Pearl, that's enough. What is this performance? Call me back." I didn't. The second call came an hour later, this time, from Savannah. I didn't answer hers either. But she sent a text, and that, I read. "Really? Gave them $50K? Did they raise you? Or is this your final act to prove you're the bigger person?" I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. But I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that bubbles up from your belly. It was dry. Small. The kind that escapes your throat when the curtain finally drops and you see the set for what it really is, cardboard and tape. 2 days later, Savannah posted on Instagram a photo of our parents on their wedding day. Filtered in warm tones, captioned, "Real family doesn't need grand gestures. They show up quietly, with love. Always." The comments underneath read like something out of a Hallmark script. "Savannah, you've always been the light of your family. Some people only show up when the spotlight's on them. Family isn't a blank check. It would have hurt years ago. Now?" It was background noise. But Aunt Emily wasn't quiet for long. She called me a few days later, her voice tight and slightly panicked. "Sweetheart, we got an email." I already knew what she was about to say. Someone had sent them screenshots. Old messages. Private texts I had written during low moments. Complaints. Frustrations. Sent to friends. Vents about feeling overwhelmed. Things like, "I wish they'd stop calling all the time. Sometimes I just want a break from being the emotional dump for everyone else." Taken out of context, they sounded cruel. Sent with malice, they looked damning. Anonymous email. No signature. But I knew exactly who had sent it. Savannah was always good at covering her tracks, but not good enough to fool me. Aunt Emily's voice cracked. "I know you didn't mean them. But reading them still, it stung." "I know," I said. "And I'm sorry." That evening, I drove 2 hours to their home in Sonoma. I didn't bring flowers. Just a box of coconut wafer cookies and an apology I knew they didn't require, but one I needed to say anyway. Aunt Emily answered the door wearing her soft blue weekend sweater. Her face held the kind of sadness that only comes from being caught in a storm you didn't start. But she didn't ask me to explain. "Come in, Pearl," she said, her voice warm. Inside, Uncle Robert was making coffee. He looked up, smiled like always, and poured an extra cup without saying a word. "Almond milk, low sugar, right?" I sat at their kitchen table, my fingers curled around the warmth of the mug. "I'm sorry," I said. "For the things I wrote. For anything that might have made you question what you mean to me." Aunt Emily broke a wafer in half, placed one piece in my hand like she used to when I was little. "You're human," she said softly. "You're allowed to be tired. Allowed to say things you don't mean to keep." I lowered my gaze. "But they're using those things to hurt you now." Uncle Robert pulled out a chair. "You didn't drag us into anything. You gave us something we'll never stop being grateful for, honesty. And love." We sat for a while. Talking. Eating cookies. No one tried to sugarcoat anything. No fake smiles. No everything will be okay speeches. Just presence. Steady. Unflinching. Real. It was the first time in years that I felt safe enough to be exactly who I was. Not competing. Not apologizing. Not shrinking. That night, when I got home, I didn't open social media. I didn't check for calls. I sat on my couch, wrapped in silence, thinking of how Aunt Emily placed that cookie in my hand. No conditions. No questions. Just care. A week passed. No calls. No texts. Until one Monday morning, I sat by the window with my coffee, staring at the thick cream stationery I'd pulled from my drawer. The same kind I used for New Year cards to clients. This time, I used it to write something final. A letter. Not of rage. Not of explanation. Just a boundary. I wrote. Please do not contact me again. That was the first line. Simple. Clean. Not cruel, just clear. I didn't elaborate. I didn't recount every childhood disappointment. I didn't name every time I had been passed over, ignored, forgotten. I didn't write about the fever I had on my 12th birthday while they were baking a 3-tier cake for Savannah. Or about how I once won second place in a statewide competition and was told to try math instead, it's more useful. They already knew those things. They had simply chosen to forget. So I folded the letter into thirds, slid it into an envelope, and mailed it certified with delivery confirmation. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. The voicemail, however, played out like a scene I had memorized all my life. My mother's voice, fractured with emotion, but icy at its core. Are you really doing this? You're tearing the whole family apart. Do you know how long your father hasn't slept over this? Are you happy now? I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I simply hit delete. A few days later, Savannah posted another message, this time on Facebook. A soft, filtered photo of a hand resting on someone's shoulder. The caption read, "Real family never lets money stand between love. But in the end, everyone shows who they really are when there's nothing left to take." The comments were filled with praise and sympathy. "You're so strong. So sorry you have to deal with this. Stay close to your parents. They need you now more than ever." It should have hurt. But it didn't. Because I finally knew that just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they share your values. Then came the real blow. Aunt Emily called me that evening. Her voice was trembling. "Pearl, we got a legal letter." I stood up so fast my coffee sloshed out of the mug and onto the floor. "What did it say?" "That we have no right to accept such a large sum from their daughter," she whispered. "That there are signs of psychological manipulation and asset exploitation." My breath caught. "Are they threatening to sue?" Uncle Robert came on the line next. His voice, calm. Steady. "We talked to a lawyer. Just in case. But no one can reverse a gift freely given. But if they keep pushing, then they'll only expose their own greed," he said simply. I bit my lip. "I don't want you both getting dragged into this." Aunt Emily's voice returned. Soft. But with a spine of iron. "Pearl. We don't take money from strangers. But a gift from family? That's different. And we accept it, with open hearts." My throat tightened again. I couldn't find words, not right away. Eventually, I just whispered, "Thank you." Days passed, and then came the handwritten letter from my mother. 3 pages long. It started with emotional pleas. Morphed into guilt-tripping accusations. And ended with a single line. "If you continue to deny your own blood, don't be surprised when no one considers you family anymore." I folded the letter. Tucked it into a drawer. And never read it again. Because I no longer needed her to consider me anything. Not daughter. Not family. Not obligation. I had found something far more powerful. Peace. That Christmas, for the first time in my life, there was no message from my mother. No come home, sweetheart. No mass family email thread with Savannah taking the lead on coordinating who brings what dish. Just silence. And oddly, it felt like a gift. I spent the holiday in Sonoma, at the gray-roofed house Aunt Emily and Uncle Robert had lived in for almost 20 years. The same house with the slightly slanted porch steps, the worn welcome mat, and the cinnamon scent that lingered from cookies always just out of the oven. There was no 10-foot tree. No Instagram-worthy decorations. Just a simple wreath on the door, a crackling fire, and 3 people seated at an old wooden table, laughing over a perfectly imperfect roast chicken. No performance. No scripts. No pretending. Uncle Robert slightly burned the hot cocoa, again. But it was still sweet. Still warm. Just like always. Aunt Emily handed me a knitted scarf she'd been working on for months. Dark chestnut, with soft looping threads that looked like gusts of wind stitched into wool. When I held it to my cheek, I felt tears prick at my eyes. I know you're not a scarf person, she said gently. But I knitted this one like I was making something soft to hold on to when things feel hard. I didn't give her a hollow thank you. I just leaned forward, wrapped it around my neck, and placed my head on her shoulder. Uncle Robert reached beneath the table and pulled out a small wrapped box. Go ahead, he said. It's nothing fancy. Inside was an old fountain pen. Heavy. Elegant. With my name engraved on the cap. I raised an eyebrow, smiling. You think I'm going to write so many letters I need my own signature pen? No, he said with a twinkle in his eye. I think someone who writes like you deserves a pen that matches. I laughed. A real one. The kind that bubbles up and surprises you. That night, I sat on their porch, wrapped in a blanket, looking up at a sky full of stars. No snow, just quiet. California quiet. Somewhere inside, I heard Aunt Emily and Uncle Robert clinking dishes, humming to an old jazz record, arguing about whether the cookies needed more nutmeg. And I thought, maybe this is what home sounds like. Not silence born from tension. Not fake politeness. But the kind of silence that exists only when people know they're safe together. When I was younger, I thought family was something you were born into. Something permanent. But that night, I finally understood the truth. Family isn't biology. Family is the place where your story is listened to, not erased. Where your voice isn't just tolerated, it matters. I didn't check my phone the entire night. Didn't scroll through Savannah's curated photos or wonder whether my mother had sent another letter. I let it all drift out into the winter wind. The pain. The need. The desperate craving to be seen by people who'd already decided I didn't exist. And for the first time in 34 years, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. The following week, I returned to San Francisco. The city was its usual blur, sirens in the distance, sharp wind off the bay, people rushing by with headphones and lattes, heads full of meetings and podcasts. But something inside me had slowed. I walked differently. Straighter. Calmer. I wasn't carrying the weight anymore. At work, I was laser-focused. I wrapped up the final phase of a non-profit branding campaign and pitched a new outreach strategy that earned me praise in the executive meeting. My team noticed. My director noticed. But I didn't crave it. Because now, recognition didn't feel like something I needed to survive, it felt like a bonus. Still, some nights, the past knocked gently. Not like before, loud and angry, but in those quiet 3 a.m. moments when the apartment felt too still. I would stare at the ceiling and wonder. Did I go too far? Was standing up in that room the right thing? Could I have mailed the envelope instead? Let the hurt slide by, unseen? Avoided the backlash, the comments, the Cold War on social media? Maybe. But then I'd be erasing myself all over again. And I was done doing that. If I'd slipped that envelope into a mailbox instead of placing it in Aunt Emily's hand, the message would have stayed invisible. My parents would have toasted again next year, Savannah glowing in red, my name never spoken, and no one would have ever known there had been a second daughter at all. That night wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to be a ghost in my own life. Still, they tried. The next week, my parents sent another letter. A formal one this time. Through a family lawyer. It requested a meeting to discuss misunderstandings and family integrity. The same parents who hadn't asked how I was doing in a decade now wanted to restore family ties. Their conditions? Withdraw the gift to Aunt Emily and Uncle Robert. Agree to a joint family counseling session. And, as written in the letter, apologize for any public disruptions or appearances of division. I laughed bitterly. Appearances of division. As if the division wasn't already carved in stone. I didn't respond. But I did call my lawyer, just in case. Not because I expected them to win. But because I knew what people like them feared most, being exposed. And I wasn't playing defense anymore. I sent a single-page reply through my attorney. There has been no financial coercion. The gift was made in gratitude and is final. No further contact is necessary. That was it. 3 days later, Savannah posted yet another curated quote on social media. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for us. Even when others burn bridges, we rise above. The comments were more of the same. So proud of you. Some people just love drama. You're such a class act, Savannah. I didn't reply. Didn't even look twice. Because something had shifted. I no longer felt the urge to correct their narrative. Let them play their parts. Let them spin their stories. I was done showing up for performances I never agreed to star in. Instead, I started working on something new. A book. Not a memoir. But a series of letters, fictionalized, but true in every way that mattered. Stories of invisible daughters. Forgotten sons. Of chosen families and the quiet power of walking away. I didn't plan to publish it right away. Some stories need time to breathe. But writing it? That was the healing. Each sentence stitched a wound. Each paragraph peeled away guilt. And by the time I wrote the last word of the first draft, I knew something for sure. I hadn't burned bridges. I had built a door. And walked through it. Spring arrived gently. The city softened, plum blossoms opened along the sidewalks, and the chill in the wind gave way to a quiet warmth. I spent most mornings writing by the window, the light spilling across my journal, the scarf Aunt Emily had knitted still wrapped around my shoulders. I hadn't spoken to my parents since the last legal letter. They stopped trying. No more calls. No more threats. No more public jabs masked as heartfelt posts. It was as if they had finally accepted it. The daughter they never truly acknowledged had made a life without them and wasn't coming back. But the ache never completely left. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of a mother and daughter laughing in the park, or see a sister holding hands with her sibling, and something small inside me would flicker. Not jealousy. Not pain. Just curiosity. Is that what it was supposed to feel like? Is that what I spent my childhood chasing? Then came one unexpected Saturday morning. Aunt Emily called. You around? She asked, voice unusually casual. Sure, I said. Everything okay? Robert and I just left the bakery down the block. We were thinking of stopping by. 10 minutes later, they showed up with croissants, fresh strawberries, and 2 lattes, almond milk, low sugar. Like always. We sat in my kitchen, sun warming the counter, coffee steaming between us. Uncle Robert grinned. So, there's something we wanted to talk to you about. I raised an eyebrow. Is this about the cookies again? He laughed. No, not this time. It's about you. Aunt Emily leaned in. We updated our will. My stomach tightened. Wait, what? Why? Because family should be written in ink, she said gently. Not pencil. They had added me as the sole beneficiary. No dramatic estate. No millions. Just their little Sonoma house, the bookshelves Uncle Robert had built, the garden where Aunt Emily grew herbs and hummingbirds came in spring, and the photo albums that held pictures of me smiling year after year, summer after summer, proof that I had always belonged somewhere. I didn't speak for a long time. Finally, I whispered, "You don't have to do that." "We know," Uncle Robert said. "But we want to." "Because you were never a guest in our lives, Pearl," Aunt Emily added. "You're our family." Tears came easily this time. But they didn't sting like before. They were soft. Grateful. Cleansing. That night, after they left, I sat at my desk and pulled out the fountain pen. The one with my name engraved on it. I turned to a fresh page in my notebook and began writing. Some families are made by blood. Others are made by choice. But the strongest ones are made by truth. The kind of truth you speak even when your voice trembles. The kind you live by, even when the cost is love you thought you needed. That's the story I'll publish one day. Not to expose anyone. Not to settle a score. But for the ones still sitting at tables where their names are never spoken, who think they have to shrink themselves just to earn a seat. Let this be a reminder. You don't have to be accepted by people who only see you when it's convenient. You can leave. You can walk out. You can choose love that sees you. That doesn't ask you to perform. That doesn't ask you to disappear. In life, we are taught that family is forever. But the truth is, some families are only forever if we keep sacrificing pieces of ourselves to stay inside their walls. Pearl's story is a reminder that walking away isn't weakness, it's courage. That silence isn't peace if it comes at the cost of your identity. And that sometimes, the realest love is found where no blood ever flowed, only kindness, presence, and patience. If this story resonated with you, don't stay silent. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? Do you believe chosen family can be stronger than blood? Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more stories that speak truth to pain and turn it into power.